because I think like there's this like middle ground that I feel like people think it's one way or the other, where you know you just want an easy job that's like gives you a paycheck and a retirement plan, or no, that's like meaningless. I need purpose, whatever. But it's like I think the truth is like some people do just want a job that gives them enough money so that they can go home and have dinner with their family and like go to the cottage on weekends, and like that's the life they want, and that's the government is your place to be. But like, yeah, to just like think
you hit it on the head though. They want to go home to spend time with their families and do these X, Y, and Z. They have that purpose.
That's their purpose. So they don't care if their job's a little boring, because it's like that allows me to do my thing and not have to work 12-hour days and like miss like school events and whatever. Like, so it's just there's just different worlds.
Yeah, I had this moment. It wasn't so long ago. Like, I don't know, like the business wasn't doing well. You know, like in business, everything it's like a rocky motion, down, up, and whatnot.
Just like life, brother.
Yeah, exactly. And it's there was one time it was like we were down bad. I was like, man, like why am I choosing business? Like I'm making my like life itself is already so difficult.
Yeah.
That like why am I making it more difficult by running a business, right? And then I was like, yeah, like, and then I started fantasizing, doing government jobs or like just working in a corporate world, right? Just because that's all everybody's doing now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like sometimes Mason and I have these conversations like, yo, man, like some of our friends are just making 80K, 90K a year. It's like, damn, man, like we're here like struggling to scrape by, you know? And then I was like, for a moment, I thought to myself, yeah, like what if I just took that route? And then I hated myself. Like, why would I even think that? You know, because it just wasn't for me. Like the fact that even that thought came into my mind, I was like, oh my god,
it's
like,
hard
just
though.
because it's not for me, right? I mean, like for some
yeah.
people it works for other people, but for me, with the personality that I have and just the lifestyle that I want, it's not suitable for me. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, it's just different things.
Yeah,
but yeah, like it's hard in business when like you're like 3 years in and still not doing well, and you're like, should I really continue pushing this? Like,
yeah,
it's tough. You basically have to decide every day this is still my choice, because you could go get a job and you could just be like, yeah, I got a paycheck, I'm happy.
Yeah,
it's true. But you know, I think with you guys in particular, you've built up this resume of skills, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, not that there isn't, you can build skills in obviously the corporate world and the government world and all those places, right? But like you've built up skills to a degree. You're what, 24 years old? 25?
25, yeah.
Okay, so you're 25 years old. You're a lot more skilled than I was at 25 years old, right? You're a lot more skilled than a lot of people I know at 25 years old.
In ways, in our ways, you know?
In your unique niches, right? But those are really high leverage skills to have,
the
skills that you guys both have. And it's going to translate if you ever decide to go into the working world and work for somebody else, because it makes more sense, right?
I totally agree.
Maybe you have a family, maybe you have purpose in another way.
Yeah.
You have the skills now to be successful in that space, right? And I don't think you would have learned those to the same level in a different space.
No, I totally agree. I've thought of that too, where like I do think we'd both have a lot of skill in the corporate world, because like it's just a way that you handle yourself, right? Like people who only think of it as a job, like they operate as an employee, where it's like, please give me this opportunity, I just do what I'm told, whatever. Whereas like it's funny, like David, he had a job interview recently and he shows up and he's like, he literally the guy who's interviewing him sits down and David's like, so tell me, why do you like this job? He literally starts interviewing the guy. It's like, and that instantly breaks the ice, and it's like, okay, so we're just two mutual like people. Like it's not like boss and me. It's like two guys. You have your position, I have mine. How can I help? Where can we be? It's like that mindset is like where you can actually start to like raise in the ranks and just like So I agree.
And I think we have this, you know, this notion too. So I have a friend, he runs a very successful property management company. And I've talked to him about his journey to getting to that point, right? Yeah. And there was a point where he was cleaning dishes from 8 p.m. till 2 a.m., right? Like no one knew about that in his life, but he was spending all his other time working on growing the thing that he cared about the most. And I think we live in this world where if you're not doing, you know, $100,000 a month in sales right off the hop, like you're not successful, right? Like people are looking down on you and they don't really understand how hard that journey is and how much sacrifice you'll have to make. Like you're going to have to go through the depths of despair,
Yeah.
right? Starting what you guys are doing. But eventually it's going to kind of come out the other side, right? And even if it doesn't, you've built up this portfolio that is so much better than most people at 25 years old. I think it's worthwhile, and I think it's very respectable, and it's cool to kind of see you guys doing that.
I appreciate it, man.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's so true though. Like, I'm blanking. What'd you just say?
This guy's
I'm
I said
so
I got a lot
tired.
of respect for you, brother.
No,
Thank
before
you.
that.
No, he was just saying about I don't know what you.
I don't know where I was going. Let's move on. But
Okay,
oh yes,
moderator.
I remember. So yes, as we were coming up, you just see so many people around that are like, just hit another 100K month, whatever, and I'm just like, oh, like we suck. We're not cut out for this, clearly, because we should be doing that already. And then like I see someone else who's like, just hit my first $1,000 week, whatever, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know what, like. It's just how you want to look at it. It's like we are progressing, and that's all that matters. Like,
And that's the problem that a lot of people do, is that they compare themselves their first year to someone's 10th year or 20th year, right? I mean, like, you got to put in the hard work now, right? And similar to us, like, if we look back on our first year, right? Like the revenue that we made in our first year running the business, we'll make that in like a month now, right? And so it's like, for us to look at someone who's been doing this for like 20 years, it's stupid for us to do that, right? Because we haven't done the work that it takes to get there.
yeah.
Not even just that, but there's a lot of people who started a year ago who have exponentially more funding than you guys had, right? They had more connections going in.
True.
They have, their dad is the mayor of the city. Like, who the hell knows, right?
Yeah.
Like, there is so many different variables that go into the equation.
Yeah.
It's impossible to compare yourself to somebody, right? And I think you just kind of need to be grateful for the trajectory that you're on. And when I look at things, it's kind of morbid, I guess. Like, I'm really obsessed with the idea of death now, right? Because I came so close to it. And whenever I try to think about the situations that I'm in life, or, how I'm maybe not where I necessarily want to be in the grand scheme of things, I try to remember, like, I'm writing this story, right? And I'm writing the story that ends the day that I die. And if I can do the things now that I'm proud of, looking back on in retrospect, that's the greatest gift I could ever ask for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you can't just sit here and wither away, I guess, like, I don't know.
Just like hoping for that
like,
huge paycheck and like
Yeah.
making it big, like, yeah, no, I totally agree. I've in a similar way, like, I've realized that it's such a like negative thing. Like, obviously, especially in business, you need to be ambitious and have big goals, but like to just say, oh, once I get there, that's when it's like things are going to get real, but
Well, it depends on the level of the goals too, right? So I've got a buddy who's a massive influencer. He's done very well. He's got like tens of millions of followers on social media. And I was talking to him yesterday, and one of the things that we talked about was where he envisions himself, I guess, right? And you see these people, especially in our network, we have friends who are making like over 6 figures a month, right? Like doing really, really well. And then you've got these people, and this guy I was speaking with, his goal isn't that, right? His goal is just to live a sustainable life, like get his house paid off, like, have kids one day. That's what he wants to do. That's his definition of success, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's commendable. I think that's fantastic. He's going to be really happy because he's labeled that for himself.
Yeah.
You can set these big goals, right? But like, the goals don't have to be monetary all the time.
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like,
exactly,
They have to
yeah.
be impact. They have
Totally.
to be,
Have your goals changed ever since your incident? Like, before the incident happened, did you have a different idea of where you wanted to be in life, and then after that, had the trajectory of your life changed?
Yeah, a lot. So before I got shot, I was working in the corporate world. I was like just this typical kid who grew up and was like, I want to be like Harvey Specter, like I want to be, at first it was law. I worked at the Supreme Court when I was young, and then I got into consulting.
Oh, wow.
I was just totally different guy, right? I was absolute booze hound, like out, Friday nights, Saturday nights, drinking, making good money, like working kind of like a consulting sales type role, right? I thought that was the dream.
for student vibes.
Yeah, honestly, right? And like I thought that was the dream for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then I got shot, and I'm like laying on the ground bleeding out. It's crazy, right? Because everyone's like, "What are your dying thoughts? Like, are you thinking about, like, do you have this montage of your life going?" And I was like, "Nah." Like, I was sitting there thinking, like, what the hell have I been doing with my life?
Really?
Right? And I
That's
was
so
thinking,
wild.
there was never a point in my mind where I was like, I'm going to die, right? I never thought that, even though I was about as close as you could probably come. Like, the femoral artery is usually a kill shot, right?
Yeah.
Didn't die, very fortunately, but I really reassessed every decision that I'd ever made as I was laying on that ground bleeding out. And you know, the thing that kept echoing is like, are you proud of the legacy you've left behind, right? Like, is this the mark that you want to be known for? At the time, the answer was no, right? Like, I didn't want to just be another corporate bro. And
how old were you?
23.
You were 23.
Yeah.
And then you were thinking about your legacy already. Because I find that a lot of, it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people are in our age group, right? Are like, oh, they're not really thinking about their legacy right now. But the fact that like you were thinking about that is actually really powerful.
I think when you're young, you're just trying to figure it all out, right? So like when I was, you know, building up to that point, I was just trying to figure it out for the longest time. You know, like I grew up in probably like a middle class, lower middle income class household. My parents are phenomenal, like worked their tails off to put everything on the table and, you know, give me and my siblings the best opportunities for success in this world. My dad was a UPS truck driver, right? He worked a hard job, right, for 35 years. And to him, the definition of success was like, get a good office job, make a lot of money. That's the thing that he never had. That's what you got to do, right? And that was the goal for me for the longest time. And then when I went through that, I realized like there's so much more to life than that, right? Like I wasn't happy at the time. Like I really wasn't, right? Like I was probably like pretty depressed, I think, like very anxious, like not confident and proud of the version of myself that I was. And
was this like during university?
This is right after. So like kind of during university, the same vibes though, right? I was working at the court for a while, and then I worked for the government for a while, and like I didn't really fit into the government at all. It kind of zapped my ambition, let's say, like just the way that people really acted there. It wasn't for me. Working in the corporate world was good because it plays on that ambition, right? Like I was in the office at 8 a.m. I was out of the office at 8 p.m. and then we were out for drinks after, right? Like that was like the vibe. But I realized I was like, you know, no one will ever remember my name if this is the path that I keep following, right? And it sounds a little bit selfish, but I realized like the best way to leave a legacy that I'd be proud of would be to be the best way to leave a legacy that I'm proud of would be to make a positive impact on the lives of as many other people as I can. Right?
Yeah.
Because like I didn't want to be known for like Brandon's accolades. It's like when I so like after I got shot, the whole like running a marathon thing, like that was for me selfishly. Like I didn't really care that, you know, I didn't want people to be like, damn, like I want to be like this kid. That wasn't me, right? It's like I wanted to show trauma survivors what they could accomplish. Yes, but that was for them. But the charity, the fundraising, like, that was the shit that I cared about, right? Like I wanted to leave as much of a mark as I possibly could on everybody else. And like when I'm working with kids now, I get so much more satisfaction out of having a call with them and seeing their wins and telling their stories, right? Like whenever I'm out, people want to know my stories. I'm like, man, this kid, I'm way more proud of them than I am of myself, you know? And it's like, that's the mark that I want to leave in the world. And I think coming to terms with that when I was 23 years old, like, bro, I'd take 100 more bullets if that's what it took to get that wisdom at 23.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, so I was there filming your event for your charity there, and Gavin was there, and you were talking about his journey and kind of that story, and it was crazy to see and like to see. Yeah, you were up there just smiling, like the fact that you were able to have this impact and the things that he's been able to do because of it. It's amazing. So like, how does it work? Like when you're finding someone to work with, how does that process go?
Yeah, usually people just find me on social media. You know, we've had some videos that have had so much traction that like I've spoken to like hundreds of trauma survivors, right? Like so many, and it's funny because like, you know, there's like industry experts in the space who've read it from a textbook and they've seen X, Y, and Z. But it's like I truly consider myself an industry expert in the trauma space now because I've done it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I've done the thing that everybody going through a traumatic situation should aspire to do.
Yeah,
which is recover
in a way that you weren't supposed to, like
in a way that I wasn't supposed to, but also in a way that could create positive impact for others, right? So like I'm a big believer that if you have the opportunity and privilege to go through this like traumatic, life altering circumstance, your recovery isn't necessarily just about you. It's about creating the positive impact for that next generation of people going through what you just went through, right? So it's like there's a few different facets to that. When I had the opportunity to get shot, it wasn't recover for Brandon. It was recover so Brandon's parents don't have to take care of Brandon, right? For the extended period of time. Recover so the next kid who goes through what Brandon goes through is going to have the hope to get out of his situation, right? Like it was never just recover so Brandon can go back to his life that it was like before. It was never that, right? Because I'd been given this incredible privilege to make this meaningful impact literally just through living my life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was really cool. Like I wish everybody had an opportunity to do something like that. And they do, but it can be different.
Yeah.
How long
Yeah.
did it take for you to like switch that mindset from like, you know, working a corporate job and then you got shot and then like obviously you were recovering, like you're in the hospital, but then like when did it click in for you to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave the corporate world. I'm going to like just focus on this whole different thing.
I'd say it clicked in the night that I got shot. Like it
Really?
was like immediate. And it wasn't like I'm going to call in tomorrow morning and leave my job, because obviously I had some time off.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
my
of
doctors
course.
wrote me off
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
while,
Time
but
to
like
think.
I went back. So the way that insurance providers work in Canada, and I'm assuming the US and a lot of places, is like they don't really give a shit about your recovery, respectfully, and maybe different insurance places are different, but like insurance companies don't care about you getting back to your new 100%. They care about you getting back to work, right? So in December, about 6 months after everything, my insurance company was pushing me to get back to the office. And, you know, whatever, that's their prerogative. They don't want to spend more money on my recovery. They want me being a productive worker. That's their thing. But I was not in a great spot, right? I could barely walk still. Like I could hobble into the office, but I wasn't recovered, right? I was this 23 or 24-year-old kid who was like, you know, like just deer in the headlights.
Yeah,
like
that's
I was
crazy.
so much PTSD, so much like physical anguish. Like I had a lot of problems still. So what I did is I started looking for other jobs. I actually got another job, as a consultant, as a risk advisory consultant with a different company. And then I had that offer pulled because they adjusted the overtime clause. Like they adjusted part of my contract at the last minute. So they made a last minute adjustment on the day that my offer of acceptance was due. So what I did is I submitted it. I was in Tremblant for the day. So I submitted it at 2 a.m. So it was late because I had to change up. I had to go print it out or whatever and scan it. And they're like, well, you submitted it late. Like, we're going to rescind your offer. And at the time I was so bummed. I was like, damn, like this is kind of bullshit, right? Like, it's like you changed things up on the last minute for me. I called you 3 times. You didn't answer to tell you I wasn't here.
Yeah.
You pulled it, but it ended up being the best blessing in the world, because what happened is I was able to go on employment insurance because I had reasonable guarantee of another job and left my current job, right? So I got on EI, stayed on EI for the next year and worked out 5 hours a day, 7 days a week. And like I was living on like, EI is not a lot of money, right? I burned through all of my savings. I put myself kind of in the hole. But what I did is I prioritized my health, right? And like that was really the catalyst in getting back to my new 100%. And during that time, I was trying to raise money for other people. Like I didn't need to start a business for Brandon. I didn't need to do X, Y, Z. I just wanted to be healthy, and I wanted to be able to help other people get healthy the same way that I was. So that was kind of like the way it all started, which is weird. You know, it sounds a little bit like shady, I guess, but like
it's crazy. Like it's so sad to think. But again, like you said, it makes sense. But how insurance handles things, you know, like, like they want you to get back to work because that means you're paying them. They're not paying you. It's just how it works.
But it's just crazy how the universe works though, right? Like that's such a blessing in disguise. I mean, like going back to something that I can relate to was that the first day Mason and I got this studio, I got laid off from my other job. My other job, I got laid off, and I was like, oh fuck, this sucks, you know? But then I was like, you know what? Instead of me like crying about it, I was like, you know what? This is a blessing, because now I can actually put more time and focus into the business. You know what I mean? So instead of like,
it's fate.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's meant to be, you know? Maybe this is meant to be. And then like, Mason and I were here like 14, 16 hours a day just painting the walls and everything. And then just like, but the thing is like when you're passionate about something, it just doesn't feel like work, you know? And I'm sure when you were working out and like you were trying to get yourself better, like that did not feel like work, even though it was so difficult for you to do, right? Like
best time of my life. Like,
exactly.
Like genuinely, right? And people don't understand that, but like the happiest I think I've probably ever been was the first 6-10 months after getting shot. Like,
because like you were just focused on yourself, right?
I was focused on myself.
Yeah.
Like you just had perspective.
I had perspective, right? It was like I was given people, like there's 2 ways to look at a situation like that, right? And people felt so bad for me. Like everyone was in my corner kind of throwing me a pity party. And like I woke up the day after I got shot ecstatic, like so happy. Right? Like I looked down, I saw my leg. I'm like, damn, like I was supposed to lose that. So that's awesome that we kept that. I'm alive. That's another win. Like things are going well. Right. And like I looked down and my leg had these 2 giant incisions. So like there's this massive gaping hole on both sides of my right leg. Like it didn't look very good to the outside eye.
So where did you get shot? Like, can you walk me through that story? Because I know you briefly talked about it, but I just want to like know like from start to end, like how did this whole thing go down?
Yeah, so I was just walking in to get my haircut, 5:45 p.m. after work, like literally broad daylight in June, in COVID. So what ended up happening was, since it was COVID, the shop owner's wife was holding the door open for me. They don't want you touching the door handles. And as I'm walking into the shop, this car pulls up, opens fire on the barber shop. The dude who was the target of the shooting sprints through the already open door. I guess he owned the attached building or something like that. And he sprints through. Woman kind of like freezes. I kind of freeze. I grab her, throw the 2 of us in. I get hit just being the last man in. Took a bullet to the chest, which broke all my ribs, which is crazy though, right? 'Cause talk about fate. Broke all my ribs, but missed my lungs and my heart, right? Because it was on the heart side of the chest.
Oh my God.
And it went through. So it went in, at the bottom of my shoulder blade, out the top of my collarbone.
Whoa.
So like
So it must have
literally
been, like as you're like falling or something.
yeah, like the perfect trajectory to miss the vital organs there. And then I took a bullet to the left knee, which is kind of like whatever. And then I took a bullet to the right quad, which was my femoral artery that burst. So that's a kill shot in most cases. Very fortunately, I had a police officer get on scene in like 4 minutes, got a tourniquet on my leg with like 30 seconds to spare, saving my life.
Oh,
really?
God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you conscious during that time?
I was conscious the whole night. Yeah. It worked out really well. I still remember most of it. Like it's a little foggy because I lost so much blood, but I have like core memories from that night, and I'm happy I do, because basically what they told me is they're like, if you pass out, like you're done, right? Like
Really?
it's like their whole focus was keeping me present that night. It was like, we need to make sure Brandon is alert and responsive, and they're having conversations with me. And I remember the conversations too. Like this one guy came up and he's like, how old are you? Like, do you play basketball? Like, you might know my son. And like, I think it was probably all a load of shit. Like looking back, right?
Just to
like,
chat.
There's no way I knew this guy. But he's just like talking to keep me present. And what ended up eventually happening, it was like probably a 3 or 4 hour ordeal before they got me in, like from maybe 3 hours from they got me, from the barber shop to the hospital, which was really quick, to the, the prep room, to the actual operating table.
Oh, really? 3 hours for that whole thing?
Maybe 3 or 4. Yeah, it was quick though.
Is that quick? 3 hours?
No, but like
I'd
to get
say so.
into surgery, like that sounds quick to me.
Because they had to put me through like a CT scan, right? So they like scanned like my leg to identify where the bullets were. Then they had to like rush me back in, assess here. Like they had to put me on basically immediate like blood transfusions, right? Because I'd lost so much blood to like give me, like there was a lot of stuff they had to do, and it was a phenomenal team, right? So what ended up happening was, because it was 5:45 p.m., I got there at like 6 p.m. It was super quick how quickly I got to the hospital. And 6 p.m. is the turnaround time for surgeons. So they had all the best surgeons from the day and all the best surgeons from the night. Like,
at the same
miracle,
time.
right?
Wow.
At the same time. And like the best of the best were all in my room. Like they cleared a full floor for me. Like this is like an anomaly case, right?
Yeah.
It's lucky I got shot in Ottawa and not like Toronto,
It's
right?
big in Ottawa.
It's so much more common. But they cleared it a full floor. Like I remember there was probably 15 people in my prep room, because they had it's a training hospital too at the Ottawa Civics. So they had like all of their students plus all of the surgeons, and like I felt very confident because there was a lot of really smart people in there.
No, true.
But to keep me present, in COVID, they weren't letting family members come see you in the hospital, right? So I called my mom as I was bleeding out, and she basically was like calling the hospital desperately, trying to get an update on me, because I hadn't updated her. Like my phone wasn't with me. I didn't have it when I was at the hospital. So she kept calling, and they wouldn't tell her I was there because it's gang affiliated. They don't want to give away my location, right? So my dad just shows up. He's smart enough to realize like, okay, like trauma, like it's got to be the Ottawa Civic. Like there's only the one real hospital here that makes sense. Yeah. He shows up. He's like pleading with the people in the ER, like, you got to let me in to see my son. And they're like, he's not here. He's not here. He's not here. Wow. And I believe it was the same surgeon who was having these conversations with me about his kid, super nice guy, saw my dad like pleading with this, the lady at the front, and was like, this is this kid's dad? And he's like, yes, I am. Like no idea that it's actually me. Like, it made sense though, right? Yeah. And he's like, okay, like come in. So like my dad got to come see me before I was prepped for what ended up being the surgery that saved my life, because he showed up and was like begging, right? But they told my parents, like, you won't be able to come in even if you're here. Like, they wouldn't let anyone see me because it was COVID.
Yeah.
But I think him being able to get into that prep room is what saved my life.
Because it gave you that confidence and like...
It gave me the confidence, but it kept me present, right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone else was like, I was like, you know, this guy was a nice guy. I didn't really want to have a 3-hour conversation with this stranger at this point, right? And like, you know, me and my dad didn't talk much, I think, which is weird because like his goal was to keep me present and focused. Like, that's why they let him come in. But he just kind of held my hand. He's not like a very emotional guy, which was really good for me in that situation. Like an emotional guy where he wears his heart on his sleeve, but isn't going to sit there and like cry because he's sad about what's going on, you know, in the situation,
like he'll
in the
be
moment.
Strong there. And
He was a strong presence, and that's what I needed at the point, right? Like, I didn't need someone to tell me how sorry they felt for me, because like,
or like your mom, because she'd probably be like hysterical.
It'd be
like,
really hard for her. And
of course.
You know, so anyways, he's in there. He just walks in, like holds my hand, and like smiles. It's like, you're gonna be good. And
Yeah,
like, yeah, all right.
That
like,
is what you need. Yeah.
Were you feeling sleepy at that point? Because I know these said,
dude, super tired.
Okay.
Like, it's like, I was actually talking about this with my girlfriend recently. Just kind of the moments before surgery, and a lot of people don't even know this, but like, it would have been really easy to give up every minute for like probably the 2.5 hours before I was put under. So like, every minute I just wanted to go to sleep. Like, every minute I wanted
and
to
so if you
my
had
eyes.
gone to sleep, would that mean
It would have been really bad. Like, they were really focused. I don't know the exact science behind it, but basically they're like, if you pass out, like if you're not present here, like you're in a bad spot. Like, you need to be focused on like staying alert, staying alive.
That's
right?
so interesting.
So my dad really helped with that though, because what he did is he laughed, like he's like kind of smiling with me, like holding my hand, like not really saying too much, but he kind of like, my dad looked at me and kind of uttered the words, sorry, I can't speak. I'm getting too emotional about this. My dad looks at me and he's with this big smile on his face. He's like, how you feeling, man? And I look at him, I'm like, you know what, man, like not too good. Like, it's really starting to hurt. Like, the pain of the tourniquet is setting in. Like, I'm in a bad spot, right? Looks at me with just this big grin. He's like, that's amazing news. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, if you've still got pain, you've still got a leg, right? Like, the second you stop feeling that pain is when you need to be concerned. And
wow,
it changed everything. Like, I didn't want to go to sleep anymore. I didn't want to give up anymore. I didn't feel bad for myself anymore. I flipped it, and I was like, I'm grateful that I'm in a 10 out of 10 pain right now, right? I'm grateful that, you know, I got shot and these guys are operating on me. Like, I'm grateful for all of this stuff, because the alternative is my eyes are shut and I'm dead, right? So it kind of flipped everything for me. And it's something I try to think about, you know, in a day-to-day now, even 3 years later, right? And it's like, it sounds weird to be as obsessed with death as I am, but I'm not scared of death. I'm obsessed with making the most of my life before the inevitable approaches, right? And that all stems from that night, because I know how it feels to die without accomplishing the things that you've set out to do in your life. And it's the worst feeling you could ever imagine. Like, it's worse than anything else you could even potentially fathom. It's worse than going through anything. Like, the worst feeling you will ever feel in your world is dying without accomplishing the things that you want to.
Wow, that's deep. So now everything that you're doing, you do it out of fulfillment.
I don't know about everything. Like, I don't know that everything has to fulfill me. I genuinely believe that it has to serve a greater purpose than, you know, it has to serve a greater purpose, right? Like, so like, if I'm doing shitty things on a day-to-day basis, like there's a lot of days I don't abide by this, right? Like, it's really easy to fall victim to like the endorphin highs and like the kind of like laziness and all those things. But in an ideal world, I think that everything you're doing doesn't necessarily have to give you immediate fulfillment or gratification, but it has to be moving towards the person that you want to become, right? And that can be really hard. Like, that can be a slow process. It can be painful. It can feel like you're, you know, stepping in mud and quicksand 100 straight days, but eventually you can start to make some traction. And like, if I died knowing that I was working towards the person that I wanted to become, I would have been happy, because I at least was on the right track, right? Like, I didn't need to be that person, but I needed to be proud of the steps that I'd taken. And feeling like I hadn't been doing that, you know, to a successful level before was hard. So like, that's what I try to keep in mind now is, you know, even if I'm not making as much money as I'd like to be right now, or even if I'm not doing, you know, as much as I'd like to be now, at least I'm proactively taking steps to becoming the person that I want to be in my life. And that carries so much more weight to me now, because I know what it feels like. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much fame, success, whatever you have, like dying without, accomplishing the things that you've dreamed about in your life is so much worse than like that is the worst thing you could ever go through.
And those like things can be so small. Like we were saying earlier, that doesn't just mean these huge goals. It could be, I never hung out with my parents. Like that could be as little as that. Like just little things that you just aren't thinking about day to day, because you're like, I need to work harder, I need to be doing this. But if you just take a step back and think like later in life, like if I had to look back and think of something I'd be missing right now, there's a lot.
Well, and there's a day your parents won't be here, right? And you won't have that opportunity, and you'll be resentful towards yourself for not taking advantage of that, right? So it's hard. Like life is hard, I guess is the moral of the story, right? Like
definitely,
like life is hard, and I think we all get caught up in these these kind of like balls of stress where we're just constantly worried about the future, and we forget to enjoy the present moment while actively working towards things we want in the future. Like you can do both. Right. And sometimes that takes sacrificing your the things that you want to do in the moment to work towards that point, if that makes sense. Like there's this whole notion, it's this Tim McGraw song I love is "Live Like You Were Dying," right? It's like, that's, talk about a song that'll make me emotional. That's one that gets me every time. And I think there's important points to it, like the concept of living like you were dying. That would mean do all of these incredible things on a day-to-day basis, right? But it's, I think it's a combination of like living like you were dying is like building up towards something that you want to accomplish in your life, right? It's like proactively taking steps to setting yourself up to be at a point where if you were to die tomorrow, you're happy with kind of the way that you've left it, I guess. I don't know where exactly I'm
just
going
constantly
with
making progress, right? Like not just being not being stagnant and just coasting.
That's the thing.
Like if you died tomorrow, would you be stoked if you spent your last 21 days like sitting at home smoking weed and watching TV? Like probably not, right? Like I'd be miserable. Like I don't smoke weed, but like I'd be pretty sad if that was the last, the way I spent my last 21 days, right? And it's like when you look at the future and you think that you're going to figure it out eventually, you forget that like that might not even be a thing that exists for you. Right? Like you might not have a future. You might not have any of this stuff. You may as well go out fighting.
That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, even for me, is that like our time on this earth is actually such a like scarce resource that we have.
And that's like, even if you make it to like 60, 70, like that's still not a lot of time. But then it could just,
well, you look at quality of life too, right? So you guys are 25 years old. Let's say your quality of life starts to decline at 60. Right? Like even if that's the case, you've got maybe like 10,000 days. I don't know the math on that, but like not 10,000 days sounds like a lot of days. That's not a lot of days, man. Like if you had $10,000 in your bank account at retirement, you'd be in trouble, right? 10,000 is not a lot of anything.
No, it's true.
Like once you start to kind of like reshape it and think about it a little bit differently, you kind of find unique ways to be grateful, let's say.
And that's important. But so you said like a big part of this is like just realizing that you want to have an impact on people and make a difference. So tell us about like how, so we know why kind of you started the charity, but like how that started. Like I know a big part of it is that insurance thing where like the companies are just trying everything they can to not pay anymore, and you want to make it so that they can do all of the recovery that they need to do. So it's not even that they're not trying to pay. Like some different insurance companies treat people differently, right? And I think it maybe sounds bad to say, and I'm very fortunate for the Canadian healthcare system, but also there's a lot of flaws in Canada in particular that the States, it's a little bit different, the way their insurance covers. Because here we have this thing called outpatient care, which is like care that's given by the hospitals for people who go through these situations. I'd say it's low quality. Like maybe that's just my bias. But it's not as good as private payer care. And what I realized is they kind of treat everybody with like this one size fits all glove, right? So if you're an 85-year-old woman who fell and broke her hip, you're kind of being treated very similarly to like a 21-year-old kid who just suffered a spinal cord injury, right? Like it's really not that big of a disparity. And I think that's really sad. Right. And it's not that I don't think we should be helping people who are older and going through these hard times, but I think young people have such a higher capacity for recovery
we need to be investing more into their recovery journeys to give them a fighting chance, right?
And less like maintenance, more recovery.
Yeah, 100%, right? And so what I realized is I have a best friend who, his name's Frank. Of all places, we met in the Dominican a couple of years before. So talk about fate. But we were inseparable before I got shot. We were really close. We worked out together anyways, and he's a physiotherapist. And again, fate. Like there's 100 million amazing things that happened after I got shot. And one of those ones was Frank, who wasn't working because he was on the COVID emergency relief benefit because he graduated from university to become a physiotherapist, but couldn't practice in clinic because he was waiting on taking his national licensing exam. So he graduated school, but the licensing exam kept getting pushed because of COVID.
Yeah.
So he had no job, a gym in his basement, and all of the knowledge of a physio.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to bother him too much, but I had my insurance covering one physio session a week, if you could believe that, which is like absolutely nuts considering the situation that I was in.
That's wild.
They bumped it up to 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, and I was at a physio who's, he was a super nice guy, but I don't think he pushed me to the ways that I needed to be pushed to get to that next level. Right. And I think that's like almost an industry standard in a lot of different clinics is like, they don't want to push you too far because they don't want to hurt you because they want you to come back.
I mean, that, right? And also like, it's similar to how like in retail, like if someone just grabs a stack of stuff off the shelf, you just watch them run out. Cause it's like, we'd rather just let it not be fixed than worry that guy's gonna like sue us or whatever.
That's
so it's like
there's
they have
liability.
to like
and that's I whatever, I get it. But like I had Frank, and I told my initial physio, I was like, I want to run a marathon within the year, and he looked at me like I was just batshit crazy. He's like, let's come back to this in February. Like we'll see where you're at. And then I told Frank, I was super upset. I remember after he told me that. I called Frank. I was like, I wanted a second opinion from this kid who just graduated and knew really nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like he was just learning the profession. And he literally like FaceTimes me, or we Snapchat call or whatever it is. He looks at me, he's like, man, fuck that guy. That guy doesn't know anything. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know what you're capable of. He's a terrible physio. Like he just roasted him, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to get you running in the next month and a half. And I'm like, bro, like I can't even walk like without a walker right now. Like I just graduated from the wheelchair, like, and he's like, nah, that guy doesn't know Brandon Peacock. He doesn't know what you're capable of. He doesn't know what you're going to do. Like, I'm going to push you through the hardest shit you've ever been through in your life. Like it's going to not be fun for you. Like you're going to hate coming to my house every day.
Yeah.
But let's try it. Right. He's like, I want a science project. You're my boy. I know what you're capable of. I know what you were capable of before. Let's get you back there. So I was in. My parents were very skeptical. But they had faith and they wanted to give me access to everything that I could. So my dad took the summer off. He was on like emergency caregiver benefit, and just straight up drove me every day across the city of Ottawa. So like from Canada to South Keys, which is like a 35-minute drive or whatever, every single day at like 10 a.m. Found something to do for like 6 hours. And then came back.
6-hour session?
Oh, bro, I was there all day. I basically lived with Frank at this point.
Wow.
So like I'd get there,
and
it was like, it was maybe we take a 30-minute break here and there, but it was like, it was a hard, man. It was, he'd be stretching me out. He'd be, the most pain I've ever experienced was in rehab, and it's not even close, right?
I bet.
Like there was days where he's looking at me, and I'm like, dude, you got to stop. I'm going to pass out. He's like, yeah, don't worry, only 10 more seconds. And then 10 seconds would pass. He'd be like, okay, like 30 more seconds. I'm like, bro, like I can't do this. And he'd be like, here's a pillow, bite down and scream, And
he must like have so much confidence in like his knowledge there. Cause like for me, I'd be so scared to push someone who's been through that and think not to make it worse.
I think what really worked out well for me is that he knew that there was no ramifications. He knew that I was bought in. There was no chance I was going to, I wasn't going to sue my best friend. Right. It was like, I was willing to be a practice dummy for him. Right. Like he didn't know that it was good. Like there was days where I don't know if it helped. Right. Like there was one day I had shrapnel still in my quads. Like I had like bullets still in my quad, and he's pushing down on the bullet, like literally pushing shrapnel into my quad to bend my my heel back to my butt to try to open up, I guess, the hamstring so I can straighten out my leg. And it was the most pain I've ever experienced in my life. So much, like much worse than getting shot, like much worse than anything you can imagine. Because you don't have the adrenaline high that you get after getting shot, right? So like, that's the day I'm screaming into the pillow. I'm like, bro, you got to stop. Like I'm going to pass out. He's like, nah, it's good. I walked out of there that day, right?
Oh,
Like
wow.
the most pain you could ever imagine. I walked back to my car. My dad was like shell shocked, right? He just couldn't fathom it. But we pushed so hard, and I trusted him. I bought in, and he wasn't afraid of making mistakes. His only fear was that he was going to fail me.
Yeah.
Right. His fear was that we don't get Brandon back to a point of health. And when he had that level of buy-in, like I'm talking, we worked out 5 or 6 hours a day. And then he spent another 2-3 hours studying, right? Like he read books, he was online, he was talking to all his colleagues, like from his old job and, you know, where he was going to go back after he finished. He was talking to all his classmates. He was talking to everybody, man.
He was invested into this. Wow.
Right? It wasn't like he didn't just do it to help a friend. He didn't just do it, you know, because it was his profession. Like he did it because he loves what he does.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that makes him an incredible physio. But I also think that sometimes in the industry, it could set him up for potential ramification, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that's really sad about the therapy industry in general, right? Is really good practitioners are afraid of making mistakes because of potential legal consequences. And like, I get it because some of those mistakes can be really dire, and I understand that point. Mm-hmm. But I think we're losing out on so much, let's say, innovation in this space and so many like potential success stories because of that, like exactly what you were talking about. But we didn't have to worry about that, so we just went as hard as we could.
Unique situation, but yeah, that's amazing.
Did you ever want to give up in any of those points where like this isn't gonna work out? Like, did you give up before he did?
No. He maybe there were days that I didn't want to show up for sure. Like there was a lot of days in the early stages after I was shot, I didn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night, right? Like I was in so much pain, and I wasn't taking pain medication. I refused after day 3 because when I was in the hospital for the first 2 days, they had me on pain meds, and I was asleep 80% of the day. In my dreams, I was running, I was playing sports, I was healthy, everything was good, right? And then I'd wake up and I was miserable because I was like, I was just avoiding my problems. I was avoiding all of these like harsh realities of my new life.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be present for it, right? Like I wanted to sit there and read. I read Mike Majlak. I don't know if you know who that is, but like he's Logan Paul's boy.
Oh yeah,
Mike Majlak.
Majlak. I don't know.
Yeah.
I read his book, and it was coincidentally, talk about fate. I was reading his book before I got shot. Like it was the most recent book that I was reading, and he's talking about pain medication and his addiction to opioids and stuff. And I was reading that book literally the day before I got shot. Like I think I've got it on my Snapchat. Like it was like the last thing I was doing, right? So I got into the hospital. I was like, shit, like I don't want to become addicted to opioids. So I opted out. But what ended up happening is I couldn't sleep because I was in so much pain. I was waking up every hour. Like I was in just the worst place that you can imagine. I was in such bad shape when I got out of the hospital that I couldn't go to the bathroom, right? Like I couldn't walk across the hall. I couldn't even get up on my walker and get out of my room. They had like this thing called this commode, and it's basically like a portable bathroom they'd had to put in my room beside my bed. So if I had to take a shit at 3 a.m., like it was just staying with me for the night. You know, it was brutal.
Wow.
But it was, you know, it was really, really, really humbling to go from that to it, and kind of motivating to figure out a way out, right? Because that was the rock bottom, right? Like no matter what happens in my life now, like I'm never going to be in a worse spot than I was then.
Yeah,
right.
I can imagine.
At 24 years old, 23, 24, I think it was like a month before my birthday, so it was like right on the cusp. But that's my rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the lowest of the low. I'll never be able to go lower than that, and it kind of, in a way, was great that I had the opportunity to experience that at such a young age because, you know, of how tough it was. But yeah, I wanted to quit, like maybe not every day, every other day, like a lot. Like there was a lot of days I wanted to quit, but I just didn't. Like I forced myself to get up and do things, and I was lucky to have a good support system around me too.
Yeah, sounds like it.
You know, even when my dad questioned some of my decisions in recovery, let's say, like he questioned Frank a lot. Like he obviously cared about me, so like he questioned a lot, which is good. But if there was a day I was like, man, I haven't slept, I feel dead, I have no energy, like I'm gonna skip physio, he was like, no, you know, he's like, I took this time off work to help you, like I'm gonna help you, like we're going, right? And I was really lucky because not a lot of people have that. And it's one of the things whenever I work with not just my grantees, but like any trauma survivor I talk to, no matter how recent their injury, I'll try to tell them, you know, you have to show up. And I think to do that, the first step is finding that hope and belief that you can genuinely recover from that. And I had that, right? So every day that I wasn't going to show up, I felt like I was letting myself down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was letting my parents down. And then I felt like I was letting, my future self down. I felt like I was letting Frank down, right? Like every day that I didn't show up, it wasn't just me who was getting hurt from it. It was everybody else who was bought into my journey. And if you can cultivate that, I think it's really, really like important, not just in recovery, but in literally anything you do, right? Like if you go out there and you dog it for 3 months straight and your business fails, like you're not just letting you down, you're letting him down, and then you're letting your parents down, right? Because now maybe you have to go back home. Like you don't just do it for you. You never just do it for you, right? And like it was a weird time, but yes, I wanted to quit a lot. But I couldn't. Like and I knew what I needed to do to be successful. I also knew I was given this like incredible privilege to be alive, and I wanted to take advantage of that.
You mentioned there how like actually having the belief that you can recover is such a big part, and I know that's a big part of the charity too. Like it's not just money, it's like you're getting on calls with them constantly and like talking them through and that, like, so that's huge for sure. I feel like if you don't believe it, then what's the point of pushing through all that? Like, why would you?
Well, and it's something I talk about, not just with my survivors, but with everybody, they immediately go to the financial side of recovery, right? And I think there's value to that. It's like, I don't have the tools to be successful in my recovery, but there's so many people out there who have all of the money in the world, who have all of the best physicians. They have all of the best, physiotherapy doctors and psychotherapists and all of the most advanced technology who don't recover, right? And it's because they're not bought in. They just feel victim. They don't want to push through the hard stuff. So I think like genuinely the first step in any recovery journey is hope, because why the hell else would you show up, right? Like why would you show up for yourself? You could go online and learn all of the, learn all of the exercises you have to do, right? To make that next level. And like, it'll be much lower quality than you get in the clinic, right? It's certainly suboptimal. But if you show up every day, it's going to put you a little bit ahead of the curve, right?
For
like
sure.
It's like that with everything though. It's not just recovery. Like if you're not hopeful, why would you care, right?
What's the point?
How do you give that hope to your to the people in the foundation? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of these people are just like broken, right? They're just like, a lot of them are on the verge of like giving up and whatnot, but like how do you give them that like extra boost of like hope that they need?
I think there's a couple ways. I think it's really important to share stories of resilience and success because it cultivates hope, right? And that's when I talk about realizing I had an opportunity to do something incredible with my situation that was greater than myself. That was the idea, right? It was like, do something so meaningful that the next kid going through what I'm going through sees that it's possible to get through it, right? And there's a lot of stories out there. Like I'm not like an anomaly here. There's tons and tons and tons of incredible stories of trauma resilience. So that's what I'll show the kids first. Like I'll try to bring on somebody who has been through something similar. So like I've got this one girl, she's incredible. I've shown her story to like every spinal cord injury survivor that I've seen. And she probably doesn't even know this, but she was a quadriplegic who, I don't know exactly what happened in her injury, but she was left a quadriplegic and she's walking again like 2.5 years later.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it's like, how much of that is luck? How much of that is her perseverance? How much of that is XYZ? I have no idea. Right. Like I don't know the magic formula for it, but it's possible because she did it. Right. Like,
but you don't know why, but also if you have no hope and no like attempt, then you don't know if it's possible. Like
and it came back to kind of what you were talking about before. I think one of the reasons that hope is lost in so many cases is because there is no incentive for medical professionals to give hope, right? Because all it can do is come back on them, right? Like if your doctor says you're going to walk again, or you might walk again and you don't, now your doctor's liable for that, right? Like that's so true. It's really disappointing. And I think, again, I try to, with every kid that I'm talking with, especially spinal cord injury survivors, like, I don't know if you're going to walk again. Like, I'll make it very clear. Like, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose this better than your doctor. I don't know. But if you sat here and just decided that you were never going to walk again, and you stopped working out, you stopped pushing in your rehab, you stopped giving yourself a fighting chance, would you be better off? You know, like even if you don't walk again, but you gave it everything you had for 5 years, you'd know you did it, right? Like you'd know that, you know what, maybe it's not possible, but I've become the man that I wanted to be in the second life through the journey. Right. And that's kind of one of the ways I inspire hope, right? It's not by giving them false hope. Like I don't just say like, yeah, if you show up for an hour a day, you're going to walk again. Like, maybe not, like, right. It might not be possible, but it's like finding yourself along that journey. That's so important, right?
That's so true, eh? Because it's like, I don't know if you're going to walk again, but first of all, there's only one way we'll find out is by trying. But regardless, like to do that and to have them like pushing through is probably going to teach them so much about what they're capable of in this new life. Like that they would never have bothered trying if they didn't think it.
Well, and what becomes beautiful about that is you create this web of people who are able to make meaningful impact on other people's lives, right? So like I look at like Gavin, who I'm so goddamn proud of, right? It's like I look from where he started when he was left with a spinal cord injury to where he is now, and like now he's mentoring other kids, right? He's helping them walk through. He's the guy who's showing people where they need to go after a spinal cord injury in so many different cases. He's got people who reach out to him on TikTok and Instagram all the time, right? And like he's like, I've grown up so much since going through this, and there's, for every bad thing that's changed in my life, there's something good that's changed too. Yeah. Right. And that came because of his journey, right? If he just sat in the hospital and had never met that community who was able to uplift him, probably wouldn't have got to that point, right? And if he didn't get to that point, the 5-10 kids he's impacted in the last 2 months wouldn't have got to that point, right? And then like everybody's down instead of everybody being up.
It's crazy. Like when you mention that, it's insane to think in some years like the impact that this could have. Like
it's like the
amount of people that this could actually like change lives is, and it's wild. Like it doesn't need to be a miracle or millions of dollars. It's just support and just positivity and hope. Like that's all it takes sometimes.
But it's so fascinating, like how much of it is the mental, the mental component, right? And again, I don't know. I don't know the magic potion. It's probably different for everybody, right? But it's, finding a way to be positive through the hardest moments in your life. I'm a big, Stoic fan. I think that's
I genuinely think the brain like has so much power. Like I know people who have had stroke symptoms due to anxiety, like literal numbing face, like really? Gone to the doctor and they've said they thought it was a stroke and then they found out this was just an anxiety attack. Like the brain is so powerful, it is insane. So to either believe you can or can't can put you in that direction for sure.
Well, and again, like I'm not a doctor, so like don't take this out of my scope. But like when you look at neurological issues in particular, right? Like stroke, the kids I work with spinal cord injuries, even myself, I had some pretty bad nerve damage in the right leg. If you can convince your body that the parts of your body still work, it's such a mental game, right? Like one of the things they had me doing that actually helps. So like I don't have like full mobility in my big toe yet, but I have a little bit. Like I've gone from like a 0 to like a 1, which isn't that much, but it's a lot on a scale of 1 to 5, right? When you had 0. And one of the things that they had me doing was they'd put a mirror in front of my right foot. So they'd cover my right foot with a towel, put a mirror there, and then I'd lift my left big toe up. So I'd stare at the mirror. So I'd convince my brain that my right big toe was extending. And then it started to give me a little bit of flicker, right? Like it slowly over time started to help me move that thing, right?
That
and it's like
activating that part of that brain that will move your big toe.
Exactly. So it's like,
wow,
there's so much more to it than I think, we even realize. And it's really cool to see I think integration of like neuroscience into actual like rehabilitative care now more so than it's ever been. And I think that's going to be massive for some changes coming in the industry.
Wow, that's amazing.
I have a question about your foundation, Hit the Ground Running. So like with the people that you work with, what's the one thing that you guys mainly work with? Is it about like giving them hope? Are you guys rehabilitating them? Are you giving them financial?
It depends on the case. So financial, like the goal would be to help everybody financially, obviously, right? I think like as we grow, that would be the best impact I could ever make, right? And it's a combination, but the finances are important for a lot of the kids we work with, obviously. But it's unique to the individual, right? So right now we've got 2 grantees that we're funding, Gavin and then this kid Isaiah, who was shot 8 times. His story is crazy too. One of the most driven, inspired people. I went down to Niagara recently to meet him, and I love this kid. I'm so excited to see where he's able to go in his recovery journey. But then we've got other people there who we can't support financially because we just transparently don't have the money, right? Like we're a small charity. I don't pay myself. Like every dollar we have goes directly to these kids. But we just try to to mentor them and provide them the resources necessarily. So we'll have like a twice a week call with the boys, and then I'll have Gavin and Isaiah hop on a call so they can talk about like their own unique like spinal cord injury stuff, like without me present. Not that like they could talk about all that stuff with me too, obviously, but like it gives them
Just
a little
give them the
opportunity.
space,
And it gives Gavin the opportunity to mentor Isaiah, which I think is really important. Like I was saying, is you know, being able to mentor as you start to recover, like progress in your recovery journey, I think is a key healing step as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's like, now you've gone through all this time of being like mentored, and now like being that now gives them that whole next level of motivation. Like now I'm doing it for them, and now I get to like,
it builds up confidence too, right? It's like now you're the guy, right?
You can have the impact.
But yeah, so we work with the financial parts of recovery, where we help cover the costs of physiotherapy and psychotherapy, and we do have some great partners who help kind of like bring those costs down for us to make it attainable. So there is really good people in this space entirely too who want to help, right? Which is great. But then we help them with the mentorship side of things. Again, that's I do that totally free with the kids that I work with. Like it's something I genuinely love doing, and I think something as I move into the next stages of like my professional life, that's something I'd really want to dive into, because I think it's very high leverage for the people who are going through it. But we'll do the mentorship, and that's kind of what like cultivates hope and all of that stuff. So really that's kind of like what I do. And then with some cases we'll cover their psychotherapy costs as well.
Oh, wow.
But it depends on the individual, right? So like we've had people go through our program who've benefited more from the psychotherapy than others, right? Sometimes you need to talk to somebody who's been through it. Like for me, I didn't benefit from psychotherapy personally. And like people get all up in arms about me saying that, but like it was not for me, because I didn't feel like I needed to learn about recovery from someone who read it in a textbook. I wanted to learn through people who'd actually experienced it.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah.
And
I mean, it's not like you're saying therapy doesn't work. It's just like,
no, therapy's great.
That's not who you need.
I can use therapy for a lot of areas of my life.
Exactly.
Probably,
just in that
just not
specific
for
situation. That makes a lot of sense.
But I also read a lot. Like I learned as much as I could on my own. And for some people, they might learn better having that support, right? Therapy is like a constant, not a constant, but a lot of therapists, what they do, and I had to do psychotherapy to return to work, right?
Okay.
And it was kind of like hand holding, singing Kumbaya, like, you know, like validate. And that was just my unique experience. And it might not be like that for everybody. I'm not shitting on therapy. I want to make that very clear. I'm a huge proponent for psychotherapy, even after trauma. Like it benefits a lot of people. For me, it didn't as much as my mentorship did. Yeah. But anyways, like the mentorship component is so important, because it helps cultivate hope, right? Like the psychotherapy side of things, it explains why you might be feeling some ways, and it validates. But I think the next step is seeing someone who's done the things that you want to accomplish and emulating that, right? Like the best advice I was ever given after I was shot was from one of my friends. His name is Michael. He's a survivor of, I guess he was hit by a drunk driver, and he was in a coma for 7 days. And he was left with a really severe brain injury. He was supposed to not recover. Like they basically were like, you're going to be like a vegetable for a long time, you know, like it's going to be a big problem. But within a year and a half, he was playing college basketball. So like he was a basketball player before. His dream was to play in the CIS, and he made it, right? A year and a half later. And he reached out to me after everything. We didn't really know each other at the time. We had mutuals, but that was it. And he just said like, hey bro, like, I know everyone's going to be in your DMs right now telling you how sorry they feel and sending your best, and it's coming from a place of love, but I'm going to be the one guy in your DMs telling you like, you got to get after it, right? Like you got to be accountable to yourself. Like this is the most important moment in your entire life. Right? Like every decision you make for the next year is going to be under the microscope. It's going to change your future. You got to step up and you got to take advantage of it, right? And like if I had 100 voices in my DMs validating me, without that one voice telling me like, you know, you got to get after it. I don't know. I probably would have been able to still decipher it. I think I was, you know, maybe in a good enough place with my community around me, and as like driven enough individual, like personally, that I might have been able to still make it. But if you didn't have that innate drive, and you didn't have that voice of like, you know, positive influence, I think it could be really bad for people. I totally understand how they like fall off the rails after something like that.
Like you need that push, like someone to just be like, yeah, of course this is hard. You need to like acknowledge that and take your time. But if you don't go work your ass off, it's going to be worse. Like, but also if it was someone who hadn't been through something similar, you'd probably be like, shut up.
What do you know?
What are you talking about?
It's one of those things where, you know, I say this a lot. you can't control what happened to you. This is the advice I was given. You can't control what happened to you, but you can control how you respond to it, right?
Yeah.
It's why, like, every time, someone tells me how sorry they are about how I got shot, or like, tells me like, don't worry about like getting into therapy today. Like, you need to, like, physical therapy. Don't worry about showing up to the gym today. Take it easy. Like, it's okay to take it easy. It's just not good guidance, right? Because you need to be kind of pushed to pursue the things that are necessary in your recovery to be successful. And that's the one thing I try to hold accountable. It's not that your problems aren't real, right? It's like your problems are very real. Like, I had intense PTSD. I had severe social anxiety afterwards. Like, I couldn't walk around the city without thinking I was going to get murdered. Yeah. Or like I was in the gym for like multiple times, like within the first, I'd say 4 months, where like I genuinely thought I was going to get killed every time I went to the gym. Right? Like, it's a really hard thing to explain to people how challenging that is. Yeah. But I still did it, right? And eventually it started to go away and started to feel better, and it was horrifying and it was really hard.
Do you still feel that now?
No. I've worked through it, and I exposed myself to the things that I was scared of for a long time, right? Yeah. And I think that's why I was able to come over the hump. Mm-hmm. And I completely understand how some people don't. Yeah. And I think that people don't because they never expose themselves to the things that they're afraid of, and then they start to go further and further and further down. And then you believe it
more and more, because you can't, you're not proving that it's not true. You're just kind of, it's still up in the air, so you just think that.
And you've got a voice in the back of your head, right? Like, when I was in the gym, I remember there was this one day, man, and I had like a full-fledged panic attack, and I didn't end my workout because I was like, I don't have a choice right now, right? I have to push through this. Wow. Yeah. But I remember being on the bike upstairs at Movati, and I'm looking out into the parking lot, and I saw this guy who, for whatever reason, like triggered that like fight or flight in my brain. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm about to die. And now I'm like surveying the cars outside. I'm like, man, like if I make an escape right now, like that car, like that there might be a guy waiting for me there. Like, I was like, I was in a bad spot, right? And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, dude, like, you're overreacting. Like, no one here is trying to kill you. It'd be a bad place for them to kill you if they wanted to, right? But like, I knew the reality of how wrong I was in my thought, but I was so overwhelmed by my unique, neurological response that I couldn't control it, right? Yeah. It was out of my control. And the only way that I was able to actively push past that was to constantly expose myself to the things that scared me and get through it, right? It was like, I started going for jogs at like 3 a.m., like through Vanier, like through sketchier parts of Ottawa.
Because I don't do that.
but he has like, a Doberman.
The logic was like, if I get out there and I don't die, like, I'm not gonna die at Movati. Do I recommend that? Probably not. Yeah. Like, I don't know if that was a great thing, but it worked for me.
That's
right?
how
you
like, dealt with it.
I had my roommates like popping balloons when I wasn't looking, right?
Oh, wow.
Or like doing things to like simulate gunfire. Yeah. And what became really cool is when I started to make progress in my psychological recovery, it changed everything, right? Like, I'd go to bed and people talk about like dreams, right? And how like you have dreams of like these things you're afraid of. And like, there was certainly a lot of dreams that I had related to the shooting around everything. And there was some nightmares, there were some bad ones in there. But about 3 or 4 months out, as I started to really constantly expose myself to the things that I was afraid of and like reintegrate into society, everything started to shift. Mm-hmm. So like the dreams in my head, I remember this one distinct dream where I was in like a shootout in my dream. Jeez. And I remember like, instead of being afraid and beat down and like scared of everything, I like took control. Wow. So like in that dream, like I took out the bad guys, right? And like, I remember like I got shot in that dream and still managed to like win, right? Wow. And again, it sounds silly because it's just a dream, it's not real, but it's like I had so vividly convinced myself that my life was good and I was going to survive no matter what situation that I was in, and like I was able to push through the hard stuff, that the thing that should have completely controlled my life lost that grip on me, right?
Yeah, it was like that dream was like the perfect metaphor. Like, you were taking control of this situation. Oh, my bad. Yeah, so it's like, that's so funny. But no, I think that definitely represents something for sure.
But that's what I try to work with all my survivors, right? Is like, I don't expect you to be this like crazy stoic, like Aristotle figure, right? Like coming out and, immediately being just like so resilient and driven in your recovery, right? Even if you think that you are, there's a lot of hard shit you're going to go through, right? That's fine, right? But like, what's not fine is avoiding the hard shit because of your struggles, I think. And if there's any trauma survivors out there who I'm able to speak with, that's the first message that I tell them, right? It's like, you're letting yourself down if you're avoiding all this stuff, because eventually, a year from now, it's not only going to not be gone, like it's not only going to still be present in your life, it's going to be a hell of a lot worse, man.
Yeah.
Like if you constantly keep avoiding the things that you're afraid of, dude, it's going to be crippling one day.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get through that.
And you're constantly just trying to avoid that. So in every situation, you're just like, okay, no, I don't want to do that because this thing might happen.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like the quality of your life is just decreasing. And like you get comfortable of just like hiding away from your problems. And I think that's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Right. Because problems will always arise. And if you are constantly just trying to avoid that, then it's just like you're just in a battle with yourself all the time.
Well, they multiply, right? So I was listening to Jordan Peterson's recent podcast. I think it was Diary of the CEO that he was on, and he's talking about this idea that if you're in such a bad place where you don't know what to do with your life, like he talks about cleaning your room or whatever, but he's like, maybe you just put the vacuum in your room, right? And then then the next day maybe you vacuum like the floor, right? And then like things start to multiply.
Yeah.
So they'll multiply by like 2, right? So like if you were in a really bad spot where you can't do anything, and slowly you start getting like ×2 growth every day, that adds up pretty quick, right? It adds up a lot. But the inverse happens if you're in a bad spot and you constantly keep avoiding your problems, because now you've got 2 problems, right? Tomorrow you got 4 problems because you didn't do the things you're supposed to do today.
It multiplies whichever way you go.
Yeah.
It's like 1% better every day. That's
and next thing you know, you're swimming in it, right? Like your business is failing, but you can't even stop it because you've got 700 problems you got to deal with. You don't have enough time a day to figure out those problems, right? Like, and it's like that in trauma recovery too, right? If you're afraid to go out of the house today and you let that be the force that keeps you in the house, you're toast, right? Like maybe today all you did was you walked downstairs to the coffee shop in your building, you had a conversation with the barista, and you walked back upstairs, and it scared the hell out of you, right? That was the reality for me. The 16-year-old girl at the coffee shop attached to my building scared the shit out of me. Right? As crazy as that sounds, because I was afraid of everybody and everything. Right? This like sweet little like super nice girl like scared the shit out of me. But I went down and I had that conversation. I went right back up to my room like a little kid, you know. And then I went to the gym or whatever. But like slowly I started to feel more comfortable having those conversations, having, you know, being in a social environment. And like eventually it started to like solve itself. Right. But it's not like I didn't change the world in a day, right? I didn't change all. I still was horrified like 95% of the time, and then it was like 90%, and like slowly but surely it got there where I felt a little better.
That's awesome.
I have one question before. I don't know how long we've been running for, but I have one question before I guess to wrap this up. For someone that came so close to dying, how has your relationship changed with people? Like, how have you like shifted that?
Yeah, it's a tough question. How has my relationship shifted since nearly dying with people? So I think it depends on the people, right? I think my relationship with people has changed because I value the people that mean something to me a lot more than I used to. And I don't really care about the people who don't, if that makes sense. Like I try to focus on what I can control and who is in my direct line of impact, right? It's why I think you see a lot of people out there who are, you know, they don't have their own house in order. They don't have their own life in order, but they're trying to change all of the lives of others, right? Like their whole life mission is about forcing other people to believe the things that they believe. I just control what I can focus on. So like nearly dying, you know, it changed my relationship with my brother, for example, is a great example, right? Like me and my brother were in just the stupidest fight. Like when I was shot, and we never talked about it after. We never like solved the problem. We just forgot about it. And then we like kind of, you know, realized I don't even know what we were fighting about, right? It's like you realize how silly and trivial most of the things that you are upset and frustrated about are. So it brought me closer with my family. It brought me closer with my friends. And it also, I think one of the beautiful things about nearly dying is, I was listening to this on the way over today too in the podcast, there's 2 things that most people are afraid of, right? And one of those is death, like dying a painful death, I think is one of them. And the other is being embarrassed in public, right? Those are the 2 big things that most people are afraid of. And both of those things were solved that night for me. Like I nearly died and it was really painful. It wasn't like a fun, you know, like just like put me under. It was like 4 hours of agony, right? And then on top of that, like they cut all my clothes off. I'm butt naked in the operating room, like around like 20 people. I'm a case study. I'm like a human science project, right? Like, it's as embarrassing as it gets. Right? Like,
that's crazy. When you said that earlier, I was thinking like it is cool you have like all these people to do it, but it's like you just got students just kind of watching like it's a classroom, and you're just like you just got shot.
Bro, like naked on the operating
Yeah,
table, right? Like,
exactly. Like this isn't a trial run for me. Like I'm really here right now.
Yeah, it's like as vulnerable as you could be.
Yeah,
but it changed my life, right? Like do I get nervous if I'm speaking in front of a crowd? Like, yeah, absolutely, right? Like everybody gets nervous. Am I anxious in crowds now sometimes? Yeah, but I also realize that 99% of the people you interact with, like, they don't give a shit about you, right? Like they're not going to remember you. Like they don't care,
because they're probably worrying all the same things you are. They're in their own head thinking you're judging them, and you're the one, you don't even know they exist. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So like nearly dying, man, it made me a lot less worried about the ramifications of like, you know, social pressure and stuff like that, right? Like I don't really drink anymore, and for a long time I thought that I was going to be an outcast for that, right? Because I wanted to fit in so bad. But I realized like most of my friends don't really care, right? The ones that do, like they got their own problems. Like they're like projecting on you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, almost everything that you're worried about is a projection of how other people feel, right? Like if you were to go up and speak in front of like let's say a high school, right? Like let's say you were going to go talk about your business and what you're doing and inspire that next generation. You got up there, man, and you just like, I don't know, you forgot to put on pants or something. You're just as embarrassed as you possibly can be. 490 of those kids might be like, damn, this guy's such a loser. They might put you on social media. They might trash talk you. Yeah. I'm going to be in that crowd thinking, you know, at least that guy tried. Like, at least that guy like did the thing that almost everyone in this crowd would be too afraid to do. Yeah. And like when you start thinking about the perspective of those people, I don't know. I think it's a lot more of a beautiful world that we live in. So So it changed, it changed my relationship with a lot of different people, and also the way that I see people.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, like David said, we do have to get wrapped up, but the last thing I want to ask is, like for anyone watching, whether they are a trauma survivor or they want to support, what are some ways that they can help, whether that is financial or otherwise? Like or just how can they follow along? You know, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so anybody watching, my socials are Peacock_Brandon on Instagram and TikTok, so you can see most of our stuff there. Website's www.htgrcharity.com, where you can learn a little bit more about the grantees that we're working with, some of the things we have going on. You can also donate there if you're interested. We are fully tax deductible in Canada and the United States now. So
beautiful.
Everything's a write-off.
And sometimes you work with like businesses where it's less of they just donate, but it's like a partnership or they sponsor an event or something. Like,
yeah, exactly. So we have event sponsors. So we don't have any events lined up right now. We'll probably do another run in the spring and then another one in the fall. Maybe we'll do a gala next year. We'll see. I think just how the timing permits, because I've got to figure out a couple other things on my end for sure. But yeah, like corporate partners are huge, right? And we do corporate partnerships with like the social media side of things too. And I think it's a great way for these businesses to kind of give back and make a meaningful contribution, right? I think especially when you look at like the influencer marketing space, a lot of businesses have budgets for this sort of thing, and they have budgets for philanthropic contributions, right? So we're able to hopefully tap into both those buckets. So
like you have lots of attention on social media for sure, so there's value there, but then for a company to actually see like what their money is doing very clearly, like when you donate to a huge charity, it's like, okay, I hope that did something good, but like here it's like, oh, it actually paid for this guy's surgery or this guy's physio, or like they can see the impact it's having. And
it's changing these kids' lives, right? Literally. Like I look at like Isaiah, who we just started working with. He got shot 8 times. Literally craziest story. Like he's a phenomenal dude, like not like he shouldn't have been shot 8 times. I'll put it that way. But he's got 3 young kids, right? And this guy is so driven, so motivated, so inspired, like just needed someone to believe in him. And we've taken him on to kind of help in his recovery journey. We're covering his cost of physiotherapy. We've got him in 2 or 3 times a week where we're kind of running through these mentorship calls to walk him through and navigate that new reality that he's living in. And we've got him hooked up with 5 days a week physio at like a top tier center in Niagara where he lives. Like they've got hyperbarics, they've got red light therapy, they've got pool therapy where he can kind of like simulate what it would be like to have his legs back. They've got him on like all of these advanced neuro like kind of like tools. And they've got phenomenal trainers in there, right? And that's the power of what we've been able to do, right? Like those 3 kids might get their dad back, right? Like that's the most beautiful thing I think we could ever, do to make a difference, right? And you know, when you sponsored us or when you work with us, like that money's not going to me, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm going to find other ways. Like I've got to work on some of my own stuff to get there. But my ultimate goal is to be fully removed from this charity. So every dollar we work with can go to the kids that we can support. And
Yeah.
they're easy to find. Like this is like, it's not hard for me to find kids that we can support. There's so many trauma survivors out there who've been let down and forgot about. And it's not always the sexiest issue because there's so many other, you know, things going on in the world that get attention, but these people need someone to fight for them. And I was blessed to have the opportunity, I think, to be exposed to some of their problems and be able to try to make a difference.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Man.
Well, yeah, I really do hope people do support and try to give him some more power to make more impact. And for the people who are trauma survivors, you know, obviously you're limited in who you can help right now, but I guess they should just follow you and just keep keeping up as things go.
Yeah, and like reach out too, you know, like if there's trauma survivors, like, and it's hard to be honest when I can't help everybody because I want to help everybody, right? Like I genuinely wished more than anything I could help everybody. But reach out. Like if even if I don't get back to you right away, especially when I have a survivor reach out, like I'm terrible with my messages, as you guys might know, but when I have survivors reach out, I'll make a note. So like when I get some time, I'll make sure to follow up with them. And if I can't help them personally, or like maybe my story doesn't relate to them, or maybe like they just aren't somebody who I might connect with otherwise, I'll try to connect them with somebody that they might connect with more. Yeah. Right. It's like I've got this wealthy, not like this wealthy, but like this wealth of survivors in my network now. Like all of these incredible stories of resilience and triumph and perseverance. And if I have somebody who reaches out that I can't connect with, I'll try to connect them with somebody who can, right? Because most of those people are happy to be able to give some of the guidance that they were given at some point to that next generation of survivor, right? So it's kind of like this beautiful like matching game. So so reach out. Like I don't know if there's any survivors watching this. Like reach out.
No, absolutely.
I love it, man.
If you're gonna do a run on the spring, I'll go. I'll do it. I'll put a pledge.
How far you want to run?
What's the furthest?
I think we'll just do a 5 and a 10K, but if we'll do a half marathon together if you want.
I'll do the 10K. I'll do the 10K. Mason, are you in?
I got 5.
Okay. Mason will do 5. I'll do the 10. Amazing. And then if you want to do I was training for a little bit for a half marathon, but I never did it.
Yeah. Why not?
I don't know. I was like, oh, this is time consuming. And honestly,
it is.
It was really time consuming. And this is not an excuse. There was a point in time where I was running a lot. And my doctor said, yo, chill out. Because all your joints are like going to deteriorate in 10 years time.
Not true. But.
And then I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe he's right. He's a doctor. And then so I went to cycling. and then so Mason and I went and
we were big into cycling.
We do like 50K, 70K. Like
it's funny. Yeah. Like I'm like generally for a long time was like scared of jogging because I thought my knees would fall apart.
It's all the way you move, right?
Yeah,
so like,
exactly.
Like if you and I'm not a great technique runner by any means, so I might be the guy your doctor's talking about. But like, if you can learn how to move properly and you can open up your hamstrings, open up your hips, like kind of like float when you're out there.
Okay. Yeah,
it's not that bad on your body. If you're willpower running, like your body will deteriorate. If you're David Goggins and you're running 7,000 kilometers a year, maybe you probably should stop running. That guy's got some problems. But if you're just doing it as like a passive kind of thing, it's not as bad as people think it is.
But running is actually really addicting, especially when you get this runner's high where like sometimes I'm running, I'm tired, but then I just push myself. I was like, oh wait, I'm not tired anymore. And then just run another like 5K. I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
I think there's a reason it's so popular when it comes to like philanthropic contributions and like all of these, like a lot of meaningful causes are centered around running, right? And I think a big part of that is because it's the best way to simulate resilience without having to go through something like life-alteringly hard, let's say, right? Because you get to kind of feel like that adrenaline high a little bit. You get to push through something hard. Like running a half marathon is no joke, right? Like,
and you feel so accomplished after running,
accomplished, man,
right?
Because it's not fun. Like, I mean, maybe it's fun for some, but it's not fun for most, right? So it's hard. I think like at all points you should have a life goal, like something in the self-improvement space, a physical goal, which is like run a half marathon, do whatever. and then a business goal, right? I think if you have all three of those and you're chasing something,
That's beautiful.
you'll be fulfilled in all
Yeah.
buckets.
I like that.
So run a marathon.
I
So
like
is what
it.
I'm saying to people.
Well,
Do
one of
you,
our buddy ran a marathon, or was it a half marathon?
DK?
DK,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he did a half, and he's planning for the Toronto Marathon.
That's
Nice.
crazy.
That's
And
his
this guy
goal.
too, like he lost like 100 pounds training for that marathon.
Yeah.
Half marathon. So I was like, big ups to him.
Yeah,
I love
So-
that.
it's killing
I
it.
love seeing good people win, man.
Yeah,
That's all that
absolutely.
matters. That's what the game is. That's what life is.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, everyone, please support. Do whatever you can, or just follow him, follow along, keep up with it, and yeah, it's good chatting, man.
Hell yeah,
Thank you
boys.
so
I
much
for
appreciate
coming
you
out.
guys having me on.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Peace out.